playoffs. Nah, the NBA playoffs. Listen, this is a topic I want to talk about because what the hell? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a freaking truck outside my house. It is 11:40 at night. I theoretically this shouldn't happen, but anyway, the NBA playoffs. Okay, we did a similar topic with the Super Bowl way back when. I think episode 24, 23, something like that, early 20s. We did a Super Bowl episode where I basically broke down the Super Bowl for all of my new fans and for all of my people that wanted to get into football and didn't really know how. Because it's a big event and everybody wants to know everybody wants to be there and everybody wants to be in the know, but there's not enough resources out there breaking down the game. And so that's what I broke down the game for the Super Bowl. And so I basically really want to do the same thing with the NBA playoffs, which is, listen, the playoffs are complicated. There's a lot of things going down in regards to teams and seeding and all of these things. And there's a lot of layers going down. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to impress their significant others, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, whatever. And so to amaze those people in your life, I got you. I am your resource to fix your relationship and to spend time with your significant others. Okay, people? So partners that don't know sports, relax. Changavi's got you. The Changavi Show is here for you to explain what exactly is going on in the NBA. So let's get right into it. What is it looking like this year with the NBA playoffs? Okay. Pretty simple. So traditionally, probably what you're used to is like, oh, we're just going to discuss the playoffs, right? The NBA is going to go right into it. There's going to be seeds 1 through 8 on both sides. They're going to compete, and then there's going to be a champion at some point. That was the traditional look. So that was traditionally, it was the top 8 teams of each conference, 2 conferences in the NBA, East and the West, make the playoffs. And basically, it's their job to make it through the bracket. This year, like last year, but we didn't do this last year, it's a little different. There's been a new element that has been added into the playoffs, a pre-playoff tournament of sorts. Anuj, what the frick does that even mean? Okay, let's talk about it. There's something called the play-in tournament that's going on in the NBA right now. Okay, the play-in tournament is basically a tournament that's for both the West and the East, played separately, with between seeds 7 through 10. So the 7th best through the 10th best teams in each conference are going to gather and play a tournament to determine who gets the last 2 playoff spots. So seeds 1 through 6 right now are locked, but 7 and 8 are still being fought over by these respective 4 teams. So if that makes any sense. So 7, 8, 9, and 10 are competing for the 7th and the 8th spot. And it's a tournament to determine who can, potentially go to the playoffs. So basically the way it works is that the 7 seed and the 8 seed of each conference are going to play each other, and the 9 and the 10 seed of each conference are going to play each other. So the 7 seed of the West and the 8 seed of the West play each other. The 9 seed of the West and 10 seed of the West play each other as well. Same thing goes for the East. Okay, so the winner of the 7-8 matchup gets the 7 seed in the playoffs. So they don't have to play anymore in the play-in tournament. They're out of the play-in tournament and they get the 7 seed in the playoffs. But that's the winner of the 7 seed versus the 8 seed. So they get the 7 seed. But then the loser of the 7-8 matchup, so whichever seed lost, goes on to play another game. And that's between the winner of the 9th seed and the 10th seed. So the winner of the 9th seed and the 10th seed will move on and play another game versus the loser of the 7th, 8th seed matchup to determine who gets the final spot in the playoffs. And basically, the loser of that gets eliminated and the winner gets the final spot of the playoffs. It adds a little more drama and intrigue, and the commissioner introduced it a couple of years ago. And it's been done in different variations, but they figured out last year that this variation caused a lot of drama and it was pretty intriguing. So they decided to keep it another year. And I think they're going to continue to keep this a part of the NBA playoffs. So it's good to explain it now so that in the future, when you guys are confused, you would have this idea in mind. The play-in tournament is going to exist. So the play-in tournament is going to happen before the playoffs. And when the play-in tournament finishes, you are locked into your top 8 seeds of each conference. You know which seeds are going to be in the East and which seeds are going to be in the West. So right now, the thing is, the NBA regular season hasn't wrapped up yet. It's currently in the process of wrapping up. We haven't even gotten to the point where we're having the play-in tournament. And so it's wrapping up and closing out. And so there are a lot of seeds still to be in contention, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot going on, and the seeding of each conference is potentially going to be changed. So what I mean by seeding is the ranking of each team could go up or down based on these final games. If they win or they lose, you know how it is, right? The more games you win, the higher up you go in the standings. If you lose a couple, you could drop. So there's a lot of variation right now. But let's go through the current standings as of today, which is, I believe, Wednesday night. Wednesday, April 6th. As of Wednesday, April 6th, these are the standings, okay, in each conference. And I'm going to go through them really quickly and explain them as fast as I can. So let's start with the Western Conference, okay? This is the Western Conference only. And these are the teams that are relevant to the playoffs right now. Number one is the number one seed in the conference, and this is locked up, guaranteed. They are going to be the number one seed of the Western Conference. Phoenix Suns. The number two seed is the Memphis Grizzlies. They've clinched the playoffs, but their seeding is still in question, but they'll most likely be the 2 seed. Number 3 is Golden State, which is the Golden State Warriors, my team. They are the number 3 seed. Their seeding is still also in flux they could potentially drop. But the farthest that Golden State could drop down to is number 4. So they've clinched home court advantage, which basically means they get more home games than the other team does. Anyway, the number 4 seed right now is Dallas, but they could also switch with Golden State and they could also drop potentially. Number 5 is the Denver Nuggets. Number 6 is the Utah Jazz. And then those are the 6 right now for the cutoff of the playoffs. Those are the 6. Those 1 through 6 are making the playoffs for sure. They don't have to worry about the play-in tournament. So now here comes the play-in tournament seeds, 7 through 10. The 7th seed in the the 7th seed in the West is Minnesota, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Number 8 is the LA Clippers. Number 9 is the New Orleans Pelicans. And number 10 is the San Antonio Spurs. So these 4 teams are going to be competing for the final 2 spots in the playoffs. What will happen with those 4 teams? We will see. But it is guaranteed that it is going to be these 4 teams headed into the play-in tournament. Their seeding could potentially change. San Antonio could be the 9 seed potentially. LA could also drop to the 9. New Orleans could go up to the 8, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of flux in terms of the seeding of the play-in tournament, but those 4 teams, Minnesota, the Clippers, the LA Clippers, New Orleans Pelicans, and the San Antonio Spurs are going to be the 4 play-in teams for the Western Conference. Just maybe in different seeding order than we may expect right now as of Wednesday. Then in the East, the number 1 seed of the East is locked up and good to go. The Miami Heat will be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The number 2 seed will be the Boston Celtics. I believe they're also locked up too. Number 3 as of right now, but could change potentially, is Milwaukee. Number 4 is the Philadelphia 76ers. Number 5 is the Chicago Bulls. And number 6 are the Toronto Raptors. So those are the 6 seeds right now that are locked in for the playoffs. They could potentially, move up or down, and potentially Toronto could actually move into this play-in tournament stage that we're about to talk about right now for the East. So the top 6, Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Toronto. Then there's 7 through 10, which is Cleveland. The Cleveland Cavaliers are the 7 seed right now. The Atlanta Hawks are the 8 seed. The 9 seed is the Charlotte Hornets, and the number 10 seed is the Brooklyn Nets. So those are the 4 seeds right now that are competing for the play-in tournament. But the thing is, the seeding in the East is such that Toronto could potentially drop into that 7th spot and compete in the play-in tournament, and Cleveland could potentially move up into the 6th spot and clinch a playoff spot without having to compete in the play-in tournament. Okay. So there's some variation with the seeding, and unfortunately, I can't give you guys full clarity on what the seeding is going to look like when it comes to the playoffs. I'm doing the best I can, because of the fact that the NBA regular season hasn't ended, and a couple games here and there could change the seeding and could potentially change what we're looking at in terms of the big playoff picture. But let's talk storylines, right? We talk numbers, we talk the rankings, whatever. That shit doesn't matter. What do I need to know right now as a casual NBA fan that's trying to impress my significant other? Okay. Here is what you need to know right now. The biggest storyline of this year's NBA playoffs is that the fact is that there are about, out of all of the 16 teams that will compete in the NBA playoffs, there's about 12 or 13, there's about 10 or 11 that have a good case and a good argument to win an NBA championship right now. In my opinion, I think there are a lot of teams in the NBA. It's in the NBA playoffs right now. It's the most wide open it's been in a while, and there isn't a lot of dynastic powers that are going to continue to advance. I would say right now that the best teams, quote unquote, in the NBA are the Phoenix Suns, and I would say that they are considerably right now the best team in the league. Is what I would describe. They're going to be a tough out. They're deep. They have a lot of stars on their team, et cetera, et cetera. But that we don't have to get into the intricacies of basketball. So the main storyline in this year's playoffs is there's about 10 teams that can potentially pull off a championship. So this year, if you are any team, you just want to get into the dance, because if you get into the dance, you're giving yourself an opportunity to potentially win a series, and you never know what happens if your team gets hot and goes on a playoff run. Then you could potentially find yourself in a position to win a championship, which was something that maybe you weren't even thinking about. So the fact is, there are a lot of teams that can win a championship here in this year's playoff race. Okay, what are the storylines? What are the other storylines that are going on? One of the other major storylines is that this playoffs can honestly be defined as the changing of the guard playoffs in a lot of ways. If you look at a lot of the teams in both the West and the East, a lot of them are filled with one common theme, and that's younger players, younger durable players. The older players like LeBron James and Kevin Durant. LeBron James was actually just eliminated from the playoffs yesterday with the Lakers, and Kevin Durant is playing for the Brooklyn Nets, which are competing for a play-in tournament spot, which means that you could potentially go through the playoffs without seeing, quote unquote, two of the best 5 players in the NBA. That's pretty crazy. So now you're going to get to see younger stars. So the younger stars are going to be the storyline of this playoffs. The younger people who are, in their 20s, their mid 20s, who are coming up. This playoffs is the playoffs of the young. And some of the younger players that maybe you guys need to look at, and I'm just suggesting a few, are Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton on Phoenix, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane in Memphis, Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga on the Warriors. I just put that in there because I'm plugging. Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson on Dallas. Nikola Jokic on the Denver Nuggets. Donovan Mitchell on the Jazz. That's just the West. And in the East, you can look at guys like Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo for the Miami Heat, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who won an NBA championship with Milwaukee last year, Philadelphia. Some of the young guys that could potentially you could look at are Tyrese Maxey and what's the other guy's name? I'm forgetting, man. But and James Harden is on Philadelphia. He's a little bit older, but he's kind of in that sort of trying to win a championship type vibe. Chicago's got a guy by the name of Nikola Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, who they're older, but they're still kind of in that. So, but they have young guards. They have a young guard by the name of Zach LaVine, who's absolutely electric to watch. Toronto has a lot of young pieces, and then they have Pascal Siakam as well, who's also kind of a younger guy. Cleveland, Jarrett Allen on Cleveland. You get the idea. There's a lot of young players in this year's playoffs that could potentially make some noise, and this is the year for the young guns. This isn't the year for LeBron James and Kevin Durant and the classic NBA storylines that we've seen for a while. This is the year of the young ones. And that is the coolest part of this year's playoffs, the injection of youth. And I think one of the things that probably should have told us that this was going to happen was Phoenix and Milwaukee last year, which reflected that the NBA has basically moved on from the old guard in a lot of senses, because Phoenix last year was relatively the same team that it is now. Yes, they have a veteran point guard in Chris Paul, but they have a young core in Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, as well as Mikal Bridges and Cameron Payne. And as well as Milwaukee, that's got Giannis and Chris Middleton. They're 2 young stars, and they're also surrounded by a bunch of other younger depth pieces as well. So that happened last year, and now we're seeing the youth come into play as well this year. Another storyline heading into the playoffs, though, besides the youth, is the fact that several stars are injured right now. So there are a lot of star players, a lot of these old guard players that are getting injured. Guys like Ben Simmons, Kawhi Leonard, and other stars whose presence, quite frankly, would greatly help the teams that they're on. But unfortunately, they can't participate in the playoffs due to some pretty severe injuries that they're facing, or they may come back potentially if their teams advance or later into the playoffs. This is the point in the NBA season where like all the stars are racing to rehab before the playoffs. You got guys like Steph and Morant and John Morant, who's that star young guard I talked about in Memphis, who are just racing to get their injuries rehabbed so that they're good to go for game one of the first round. And so it's mass injury updates all around right now for the NBA. And so if your significant other is an NBA fan, they will be checking and they have a player that's on injured reserve, but it's looking to potentially come back for the playoffs. They're probably refreshing their phone every so often just to see some injury updates in there. Okay, what is going on in the playoffs? What is the structure of the playoffs? Let me explain the structure real quick. I know this topic went on a while, but I wanted to really just break down what's going on and what you guys need to know for the playoffs. Anyway, structure of the playoffs right now: 7 games through the entire way. This isn't like baseball where it goes from 3 games in the first round to 5 to eventually 7. This is 7 games the entire way. So 7-game series the entire way. First team to win 4 games wins the series and moves on to the next round. The play-in, like I discussed earlier, is going to be pretty interesting because on the East, you have a team like Brooklyn that's got guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving that could potentially have enough firepower to make a run and grab one of those final 2 seeds, which could mean potentially upsetting a Miami or a Boston in the first round, which are much younger teams, like I discussed earlier. So there is some interesting sides at play, particularly in the Eastern Conference. There are a lot of what ifs in the air right now in terms of seeding and all of that. And once the seeding gets locked in, there's going to be more clear storylines. But it's shaping up to be a really exciting couple months of basketball, a really exciting postseason with a lot of new stars and a lot of new potential storylines to keep in touch with. I promise you, I will keep you guys updated on what's going on with the NBA playoffs. This is like my life. I love the playoffs. I think the NBA playoffs, I think basketball playoffs hit different. I know the NFL playoffs are crazy good, but the NBA playoffs are another level of intense. And if you're a huge NBA fan, like you love the playoffs. This is the time of year that you want to be into basketball because it's so exciting and it's so cool. And I didn't talk about the Warriors that much. I told you, but I'm hoping the best for them. They're the 3 seed right now because they're my team, and I want them to see them do well. Bay Area, born and raised, so we're praying for them too. If you're not praying for them and you're listening to my podcast, then sucks. But yeah, there is a lot of storylines. I didn't even cover a lot of the storylines like within team to team. If you wanted me to do a whole episode on that, I can do that as well. Let me know. But yeah, that's the basics.